Hi, this is John Dumke, and we're here today to look at how to evaluate a rental property quickly to determine whether it's got good cash flow or not. A little bit of background, probably the first important term to understand is the gross multiplier. Lower is better. What a gross multiplier is it's simply the gross annual income times the gross multiplier equals the purchase price of a property. So if it's lower, you're paying less for a building's given cash flow. As an example, if you were to have a 4-unit property building that would each of the units would rent for $1,000 a month, the monthly income from that building would be $4,000 a month. The gross annual income would be $48,000. And then if the building had a 10 times gross multiplier, it would be a $480,000 piece of property. So the lower the better, the higher the not as good. As a rule of thumb, cash flow and quality of neighborhood are inversely proportional. What you see is that the better neighborhoods will not generate as much cash for the same purchase price as a neighborhood that's of lesser quality. Here in Long Beach, as a rule of thumb, we see the gross multipliers range between around 8 and 18. 8 is about as low as it would get for an apartment building in a not so great neighborhood, and somewhere around 16 or 18 would be your gross multiplier for a single family home that really wouldn't make a great rental cash flow type of property. Where properties start to make sense is at about a gross multiplier of 12 or less, and 10 is great. If you do get down to 8, you might not like the neighborhood. It might look good on paper, but not so great when you drive by and visit the property. Now, the key to quickly analyzing a property and to seeing if it's worthy to, of further consideration is to quickly analyze the rental figure of the property. Now, you could look at the number of units and how many bedrooms and bathrooms are in each unit and tally up the total rent rolls. But if it's an 8-unit apartment building or a 4-unit apartment building, that might take you a while. So a really quick way to estimate a building's rental income, the total rent from all the units, is to know what the rental rates are throughout Long Beach. Typically what you see is that the rental rates are between around $1.25 to $2 a square foot depending upon the quality. In the not so good areas it might only be $1.25 a square foot, and in the very good areas it might be $2 a square foot. And so let's just take a simple example of maybe a 3,000 square foot building in an average neighborhood. Maybe we determine that that average neighborhood brings in about $1.50 a square foot. Well, that 3,000 square foot of rentable space would generate about a $4,500 a month income. Now, the reason why it's important to be able to make these calculations yourself is because there's not a lot of data that I trust in the multiple listing service, especially when it comes to income property. There's 3 bits of data I can trust because they're auto-populated from the tax assessor, and that's the number of units, the building's square footage, and that's the square footage for the entire building, and the building's lot size. Everything else is input by real estate agents and can be wrong. So I never trust a seller's or an agent's estimate of rent. Sometimes the rents can be too low, sometimes they can be too high, or sometimes they're simply not listed. So let's take a look at a quick example of a property we recently sold, and this is the MLS printout. Obviously the address and the price is correct. It did sell for $755,000, but here's the 3 bits of data that I look at: the number of units, the assessor's lot size, and the total square footage from the building. And here you can see, if I scroll down, that in the rent rolls there is nothing listed. And the gross multiplier that the agent input was 23.15, which is a terrible cash flow. It actually turned out where this building, once the rents were brought up to market value, was around 11 times gross. So the disparity between what was listed and what was actual was huge. So now we want to put it all together. We want to use the 2 rules of thumb with the rental rates and the gross multiplier to determine quickly whether a property is going to make sense. We know how to calculate the relationship between a building's total size and the total income by using the $1.25 to $2 range, and we know that buildings in the 11 times or 12 times gross multiplier or less do cash flow. So there is a relationship between the total income and the building. Let's just call a $5,000 a month income in relationship to a $500,000 building a 1-to-1 parity. And let's pick it up in part 2